Do you miss social media at all?
No.
Really? Like, not
all.
even the least?
No, I'm slowly getting off of all of it. I had to go slowly because like it was my life. It was my job. But slowly getting off all of it. I've had Instagram, the app, off my phone for a while now. I just recently took Twitter off my phone. What else? The Facebook app's been off my phone, although I cheat and go right on the internet, Facebook.
I think that's the hardest thing. Like, I don't want to delete it entirely, but because I do like to stay in touch with people,
Yeah.
like actually keep up with people's, like my friends' lives. But at the same time, it's so easy to just go on there for a second and get sucked into it and never get off of it.
Yeah, and then the more I've been paying attention to like bad habits and trying to train better habits, and like looking at dopamine habits and dopamine addiction, the more I realize going on, it snowballs into all of that.
Yeah. Like, even there's times I'll say, okay, I'm just going to look at this I have 2 minutes to kill. I'm just going to look at this for a second. Next thing I know, 15 minutes go by. I'm like, how is that even possible? What happened?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I feel like it's actually really bad for just your attention span.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I notice days I just get up, I don't look at anything, I start working, and I just don't look, not even social media, but my phone in general. I notice I'm so much more apt to get way more done. I'm way more productive as opposed to if I get up in the morning and I check Instagram or I check Facebook or whatever the case may be. I notice almost the rest of my days in the toilet.
Yeah.
Like, not nearly as productive, not nearly as motivated. And I go, how is this even possible?
Yeah, I notice a lot of differences. Like I notice like my need for constant stimulation heightens when I go on social media. Like I'll feel really grounded and relaxed and just chill and going about my day, getting work done, focusing on what I want to focus on. And then when I start going on social media, suddenly there comes that itch to let me check social media again, and let me check it again, and then let me go pick at something. I'm not even hungry, but let me go pick at some food real quick because I'm bored or whatever. Next thing you know, it's like let me go on TikTok now. Let me jump on a video game, and it's like next thing you know, I can't even sit still anymore. It like snowballs into like, and it's slow and gradual, but it's just like one scroll at a time.
Yeah.
But I've noticed and I've paid close attention to it. Mornings where I don't go on any social media, I'm very grounded and I feel very level-headed and very calm and relaxed to the core. And then the second, even if it's just, you go to use the bathroom and you scroll on your phone while you're going to the bathroom, the second I do that, it's like something shifts and it's like a layer of that groundedness just gets pulled away. And then every time you go on after, it just continues getting deeper and deeper and deeper. And then the more I've been learning about how dopamine works, actually, the more it makes sense, which is crazy. So
yeah.
I've been trying to get so far away from social media. And honestly, just because it was my job for so long too, it brings a lot of weird, I don't want to say anxiety. It brings like a weird kind of pressure to me. Like for a decade, I basically lived for other people. Even though I was pretty good at being myself in a lot of ways. Like obviously you have to be yourself to be successful on social media. People
Right.
want to follow somebody who's interesting. Still, no matter how much of an individual you are, if your job is social media, it's impossible to not focus on other people's opinions, even if it's just inadvertently and roughly. I mean, like you care if those views are not coming in. You care if the comments aren't there, the likes aren't there, So inadvertently, no matter how independent you are or how grounded you are, if social media is your job, you end up thriving off of like external validation. And even if you're not the type to like necessarily care if people like you for who you are or accept you, like, you may not get bothered if people are insulting you or anything like that. Like you may still hold true to that. Still, the social media is your job. So like lack of views translates into lack of a paycheck or lack of success or lack of growth of business, which creates the same stress and panic you might get like if suddenly you're on the chopping block getting fired at your job.
Right.
Or, if you've been running a business that's not social media related, maybe you have an auto mechanic car repair business or something like that, whatever your business may be, and suddenly business is slowing down and customers aren't coming in. Like that same sort of like stress you feel from that, and the same sort of elation and excitement you get suddenly when you have tons of customers coming in, or when you get a bonus at work, you start getting those feelings from likes and views on social media. So for what all I was going to say is from a decade of that, I realize that when I go back on social media now, it sparks this weird like almost stress, like this weird it feels inauthentic. Like just because I've been working on being grounded into myself so much lately, that now when I go back on, that part of my brain that suddenly starts calculating how to how will this be perceived? Is this a good way to structure this story? Does this font look right? Is this a good time to post? Is it good traffic right now? Suddenly my thinking shifts to doing everything for other people, even if it's just inadvertently.
Right.
And I've been noticing, now that I've had a break from it, I've been noticing just how like disgusting that feels.
It's just so bizarre because I feel like you hit it right on the head. It's impossible to not care what other people think and put other people's lives in your head. And I don't want to say feel behind, but if you're following all these successful people on social media and they're all like in the Bahamas or, driving Bugattis or whatever the case may be, and you're just like, oh, I'm over here editing this, or I'm just, playing with this, like going on about my own merry pace, I feel like it's very hard to stay in your own lane.
Oh, yeah.
And you almost throw that entirely out the window.
Yeah, that's another layer to it, I would say. So I would say what I just covered is the most basic, that's like layer one of social media, where you're doing it for other people inadvertently, just as far as you're still focused on the views and like everything you're doing, it's like a dancing monkey. It's for other people's views and reactions. The next layer of that, I think, is what you just said, where you start comparing yourself to everybody. And I'd like to think, like, as someone who's on the was on the inside of the social media influencer world, like I was the one posting with the following and everything, I'd like to say it's easier to not fall into that trap once you're on the inside, because it's like, okay, I see through the curtain now. Like I realize what everyone's lives are like. I realize the highlights they're posting. I've done some of it myself, so I won't fall into that trap. Like I understand social media is just highlight reels. That won't bother me. I'm in the know. That's what you kind of want to think. And maybe you're aware. You're, as an influencer, you're able to stay on that track better than the average person is. But I'll tell you, even as an influencer, like there have been times where I've like muted my own friends on social media, just not unfollowed them, just muted them, so I wouldn't see them in my feed anymore, just because I might be going through a phase where I don't feel great about where I'm at. Maybe it's like a building phase, a rebuilding phase. I'm starting something new, whatever the case may be. I just may not be feeling super hot about where I'm at. And that's okay. That's life, your ups and downs. But then I'll see some of my friends posting like this crazy new milestone in business or getting all these, whatever, brand new views. And I'll just feel like crap about myself. So I have to go and like mute them or just delete social media altogether. Instagram I think was the only one that really got to me like that. I think Instagram, I sought validation from the most out of all social medias. I can't really tell you why. I'm not sure why. Like most people get bothered by Facebook. You hear about people getting off Facebook. It's so toxic. Facebook's never bothered me. Nor did Twitter or YouTube, but Instagram though, I remember like I would really start to like let comparing myself with my peers really get to me and eat at me. And I start becoming very bitter and spiteful and negative in my head. And so that was actually one of the reasons too where I got off Instagram first, just because I'm like, man, that just sends me down a bad rabbit hole.
I think Instagram is the worst for a lot of people because it's all pictures and videos and no one posts any status or anything like that. No one really, I don't want to say posts life updates, I guess, but there's no life updates in text form. You physically see what that person is doing. Facebook, I really don't like because it's just, I feel like all it is now is just people complaining.
Yeah.
Whether it's political or whether it's, I don't know, sports. I feel like it's just really in general, I feel like social media just has so much negativity tied into it.
Everyone has to argue about everything.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Like, doesn't anyone have a conversation anymore?
Yeah.
What do you think social media means for society going forward? Because I don't think it's too late. Like, it's not going anywhere.
I encourage everyone to start looking up dopamine and how it all works. And I sent you that video too. There's a video. Of course, I'm blanking on her name now. Do you remember the neurologist's name?
Oh,
I'm blanking on it because I'm classically horrible at names.
I have it. I'll find it.
The video though is called. Just type in how I made dopamine my superpower. Start there. It's a very easy to listen to video. It just kind of scratches the surface, but it gets into more content about dopamine than I ever knew before. And it really teaches how dopamine works. And a quick synopsis of it from a layman, okay, I'm not a neurologist, but the quick synopsis of dopamine is it's like a seesaw in your brain, and your brain always wants to keep that seesaw nice and balanced, nice and even. So when you do something that releases dopamine, the whole reason we have dopamine from nature is to motivate us to do things to keep us alive. Mm-hmm. Like they did an experiment where they removed dopamine from a rat, or they muted its dopamine response. And the rat wouldn't even eat food. It let itself starve. The food would be right there in its cage. It had no motivation just to go and walk to its food. It let itself actually starve because there was no dopamine drive to go and get it. One example, depression's a complex thing, but one part of depression can be like a lack of dopamine. There's a lack of serotonin. There's a lot of complexity in depression, but like one part of it will be that lack of dopamine too, and there's just no motivation to do anything. And so dopamine was there to drive us, to inspire us to do things that we probably wouldn't do normally, like go out and hunt. Like if we hunt in the wild and we get a kill, we get this, ooh yeah, it feels good. It's a reward system, and it makes us want to go and do that again, which inspires us to stay fed. Same with eating. You get this crazy dopamine rush. That's where food addiction comes from. That's also where stress eating and emotional eating comes from, is the dopamine rush. So people that get addicted to food, it's the dopamine they're getting addicted to. And dopamine is essentially what you're getting addicted to with a lot of things. But it made sense back in the wild. You get this rush of dopamine, you feel good, and when you eat, it's going to make you want to go and hunt again and eat again to stay alive. Same with sex and so on and so on. So how dopamine works is that seesaw in your brain. When you get that reward, that dopamine, the seesaw tips to the happy dopamine reward side. You're in euphoria. You're like, yeah. Then it counter tips to the other side, to an extreme. It goes all the way to the other side and dips into the pain, anxiety side. And this is actually withdrawal. You're actually withdrawing from dopamine. And it's pretty temporary, but it is actually a state of withdrawal, which is crazy. So think of withdrawal from alcohol or a drug withdrawal. And obviously by that stage, it's an extreme, prolonged stage of withdrawal. But you are going through that in a very a much more temporary state. You're going into this deep withdrawal state from that dopamine. And that's why immediately after eating something or having a beer or playing a video game, you immediately kind of want to go to one more beer. Let's play one more game. Even if you're full and done eating and you're watching TV, you're like, man, this has been fun watching this show and eating. I'm going to go get seconds even though you're not hungry. It's that withdrawal. You want one more. You're in a state of suffering temporarily. So what happens is if you just sit there and you don't act on that, and you just let that state of suffering kind of play out, pretty soon your brain is going to balance it right back and you'll be even again. So that's the ideal way to do it. But what happens, what most of us do, is we go into the side of dopamine, feel great, come down, go into withdrawal. Immediately we hate that withdrawal. We get the anxiety, the cravings, we feel blah. We immediately go to chase that dopamine again to get us out of that withdrawal. But this time, when we do it, we get less of that dopamine response. And this time when we come back to that withdrawal side, we go into that withdrawal side even heavier and we stay there even longer this time. So then, of course, we want to chase that dopamine again because now we're suffering even more. So we go back. But again, this time it's less dopamine. We're getting less out of it and we're staying in that withdrawal side even longer. And what happens is if you keep abusing this and chasing the dopamine, your seesaw basically stays in that suffering, anxiety, withdrawal state 24/7 to where it almost becomes your normal. And then you're chasing these dopamine things just to try and get the seesaw back to normal now. You're not even getting a high out of it anymore. And that kind of is where the whole principle of, any sort of addiction comes in, where initially what got you high, now you need it just to feel normal when you're deep into the addiction. That's what happens with every little thing. So what happens nowadays with social media and with everything is originally dopamine was there to get us moving and do things that are important for our life. But now in 2022, we're in this world where we have this abundance of food, instant gratification. We can get food anytime we want. We don't have to leave our couch. We can DoorDash it now. There's fast food restaurants. We have entertainment at our fingertips, left and right, video games, TV streaming. Also serotonin, that the woman in that video goes into how serotonin has a lot to do with our sense of connecting with one another. And that goes hand in hand with the dopamine rush as well. So going on social media, you get that sense of connectivity, which is serotonin, and that creates that same sort of response. So the social media thing, what it's doing is every time you go on social media and you get a comment, a like, you see your notifications pop up, that's that connectiveness with people. Also, when you scroll, you're getting that stimulation. That's that dopamine response. You're constantly going to the dopamine side every time you open that social media page and you're scrolling and you're interacting. And then when you get off social media, you go right into that withdrawal side. And that's why, if you've noticed, it's so damn hard. Once you start scrolling, it's hard to stop. If you've been on and off your phone all day long, it's easy by later on in the afternoon, just to sit on your bed and just scroll for an hour. And where the hell did time go? I just sat there scrolling at nothing. It's literally that addictiveness making you do that because now your brain's craving that. And it comes into play with everything we do, which is insane, which is what I've been paying attention. I'm not an expert. This is just what I'm learning. The information is out there for everyone to learn. But I've been paying really close attention to this and trying to like pay close attention, be mindful of all my behavior and like just day-to-day activity, especially with social media. And it's crazy. And that's why I said I've noticed it now to where like in the morning when I'm not going into dopamine vices, I feel very grounded and calm. The second I start scrolling through social media, it starts small. It's like, okay. Then next thing I know, it's like, oh, let me check one more social media thing. And then it snowballs over the day. And by the end of the day, I feel a lot less grounded, a lot less just calm, a lot less content. It's crazy, the snowball effect it has.
Oh, I've definitely noticed that in myself too. Like if I get on it like early and often in the day, I noticed I'm way more aggravated. I'm cranky. I noticed, like we already said, I can't focus nearly half as well. And I feel like if I'm off of it, it doesn't matter what I'm doing. Like it could be the most boring thing in the world. It could be a crossword puzzle. It could be skydiving. It's the most interesting thing to me, and I'm happy doing it.
Yes.
But if I go on it, it doesn't matter what I do when I get off. It doesn't matter if I'm running. It doesn't matter if I'm again skydiving. It doesn't matter if I'm sitting here talking to Nick Wright. It doesn't matter because I am just so craving that dopamine hit. And I think that's also part of the reason why a lot of people don't really follow whatever passion they're going after or kind of focus on the long term on a lot of things, because going back to what you said about everything is such easy access in this day and age, like DoorDash, Instagram, like it's very easy to find a way to be content at your fingertips instantly, as opposed to waiting long term for something that might be better moving forward. But I really do wonder if social media just disappeared. And there's obviously, this is never going to be proven, but if social media just disappeared, how many people that have anxiety and depression, I wonder how much of that would be solved.
I think you'd see a massive reduction in, and that's not knocking the reality of depression and anxiety, because
100%.
clinical depression and clinical anxiety, it's a different thing. Okay, so if you have that, that's a different thing. But as far as just day-to-day senses of anxiety and depression and lack of happiness, I think you'd see a huge difference. And a couple of examples. One, in that same neurologist we just talked about, she references how the richest countries, we in the US are one of them, but the richest countries also have the highest suicide rates. And people will make arguments about like disparity and differences between rich and poor, and those are factors, but a lot of it is just because we have the most constant overstimulation available to us at all times, and it just leaves people drained and unhappy. What's interesting is you can tell who is, this is going to be a controversial statement, this is me just kind of guessing this, but I'm going to put it out there. You can probably get a good idea of who's going through the most anxiety in the moment in a social gathering by who is on their phone the most. The one scrolling on TikTok the whole time during a social gathering, even just a family gathering, probably has the most anxiety going on right there. And the only reason I say that so confidently, they may not even have like any real anxiety normally, but they're probably creating it for themselves right there, just from that dopamine loop, because you feel uncomfortable, you feel socially awkward perhaps, whatever. Understandable. So what do? You don't want to just be awkwardly sitting there twiddling your thumbs, so you pull out your phone to try to look like you're doing something, or maybe just to entertain yourself, and then there comes that loop that begins, and it's crazy. But what you were saying too, though, is like, you can't, like, you can, if you're grounded and away from social media, little things can become fun, and that's been found too. If you spend more time willfully kind of in that pain side of the seesaw, but like in a natural, productive way, meaning you do little things that may cause a healthy discomfort for you, like staving off instant gratification. If you want something, make yourself wait a couple hours before you eat or something like that. Just little steps to stave off instant gratification. Getting work done that kind of sucks because, it needs to be done. It's the right thing to do. Little things that keep you in that pain side a little bit more in a healthy, natural way. It ends up giving you a more natural and more frequent dip to the dopamine side. So you'll end up finding joy in these little day-to-day things. And the more you dive into stimulation, the more you're in that withdrawal, the less dopamine you're going to get even when you go for dopamine things, which is why everything becomes bleak and boring. So yeah, I think if you reduce social media, and I'm not anti-social media because I think there's so many amazing benefits to mankind and civilization with social media, especially from like a business standpoint. But I definitely think it comes at a cost for human health. And I've actually talked to my cousin who is both a high school teacher and a college professor, does both. And he said he's noticed that the rare few kids that aren't on social media, they're the minorities these days, of course, but the few that are not on social media tend to be much, much happier and more self-content than all the other kids he teaches. And of course, that's just anecdotal, but it kind of makes sense.
Oh, it 100% makes sense. I can definitely see that. And I wonder, I have this, I don't even call it a theory because it's proven, but what happens, like you said, it's more of a default. People just start scrolling through their phone. What I don't think people understand when they're working on, whether it's a project for school or a project for work or whatever the case may be, is if you just put social media away, not even social media, your phone, any sort of distraction that you're addicted to, it could be the TV, it could be anything, and you just sit there and think, and you might not even be doing anything. This can be in just not even for something for work. It could just be literally you getting up in the morning and sitting there on your couch and staring into space. Your brain's going to look for something to grab onto, and that's going to start giving you ideas. Like when I'm really struggling for an idea for a video or something like that, I literally just sit there. Like I don't do anything. I just sit there and my brain's wondering. Another thing is you can even do this while you're driving. Just drive in silence.
Yeah.
You're going to notice like there's things I've noticed. Like I've lived here for probably about a year and a half now. And a few months ago, I'm like, let me try driving in silence. I noticed things I had never noticed living here for a year and a half, like street signs. I've noticed like landmarks. And I think if people just had that discipline to almost turn everything off and just be in the present moment and essentially delete everything, then people get a lot more ideas.
Yeah.
And I think they'd really find a lot more joy in day-to-day life.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that part of that is just being mindful, which is another thing I've been working hard on, with meditation and everything, but just being mindful, just being aware of what's going on in your own thoughts, in your own mind. Are you trying to distract yourself? Are you going to instant gratification? And so, yeah, I've noticed things like that too, driving without music. Major experience. I mean, it feels so much better. And I think, and this is just my guess, just from what I've been learning, I wouldn't be surprised if even something like music, as enjoyable as it is, and I love music, I play music, so I'm not knocking music, but I'm just wonder if like it's another way to need constant stimulation at times, time and place. Sometimes it really is enjoyable to listen to music, but then I wonder if sometimes, like if you're somebody who you cannot do a simple car ride without music, you might want to take a look at that because that means you need stimulation. And then I wonder if you're constantly listening to music to have that background stimulation going, if that's not maybe starting to do the dopamine seesaw thing to you. And you never know. Maybe by the end of that car ride of listening to music, maybe your anxiety is like slightly higher than it was. You're a little more tense than you were before just because you were going to that stimulation via music or listening to a podcast. I think those things are okay to listen to, but I think it's a matter of like, understanding, okay, are you listening to this because you actually are in the mood to listen to this song right now, or you really want to know what's going on in this podcast, or are you listening to this because it's too damn quiet and what else are you doing? You're driving, you have to listen to something. It's just what you do. I think that's when it's what the question should be.
I find if you take, and this applies more to like podcasts and audiobooks, because music, I find if you're listening to the same songs over and over again, I feel like usually that doesn't do as much for you as maybe you think, other than just basic enjoyment. I try to make my car rides like as productive as possible and listen to something knowledgeable.
Same, yep.
Yeah. But I find if you just take a couple of sessions and not listen to anything and you jump back into it, you'll find that whatever book or whatever podcast you were listening to, you'll be able to understand it 10 times better just from that little bit of a detox. Like, I mean, 2 car rides and you'll notice you're like way more locked in than you were before.
True. So you're saying take a couple of car rides as an example, just to ride in silence for a little bit, to like detox from listening.
100%.
And then come back to listening.
Yes.
I agree. And actually that neurologist said that as well. She said that that's exactly what you just said is what she found with podcasts and with even reading books. She's
really smart. I read her book and she was talking about, one of the things she talked about in the book is she had this client who was addicted to weed. She smoked every single day, and she said that's all. This goes back to the seesaw thing that you said.
I think I heard this one.
Yeah, all she said was she had to smoke. That's all that would help her anxiety. And she said to her, just stop smoking and essentially embrace the pain. She noticed at first it was next to impossible. Anxiety, waking up, anxiety going to bed, like very, very, very strong anxiety. And then she found as time went on, she didn't really have anxiety. She was just craving that dopamine hit. And ultimately, it was cured just by stopping smoking.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because every time she would smoke, it would give her that dopamine hit to ease her nerves, and then she would go back into withdrawal, and then she had to smoke again. That withdrawal was the anxiety. I heard that as well. It's crazy how that stuff works. And it's what people don't realize is it's in day-to-day things, like little things. I mean, like, as silly as it sounds, basic behaviors like even like masturbation. I think she talks about sex addiction actually at one point, but I think like masturbation, especially for men. I can't speak for women. I don't know if it's a little bit different for them, but I know for men, a lot of guys will end up doing that when they're not even in the mood to. It's just like, it's a habit. It's night. It's time to do it. Little things like that. Eating when you're not hungry. Like picking at food, stress eating. That's another same way of doing that. Video games, watching things, listening to things for background noise. I mean, just little activities. So it's interesting with these little things. That's something as simple as you think you're hungry, but hold off actually. Wait until a certain time to eat.
Right.
You know, you're not going to die. So just wait, see if you don't notice a difference. And you might note and see what you feel. If you next time you want to go on your phone, you pull out your phone, make yourself stop for a second and put that phone down. And you might feel real uncomfortable for a little bit and just sit with it. And then it applies to all these little activities that we do that we just kind of take for granted day to day. But it's funny how much we do for stimulation, for dopamine, and how much we actually kind of become addicted to them day to day because they just seem so useless and harmless.
I was actually listening to this podcast, and what the guy was saying is when you have a bad habit like checking your phone, and say you decide, I want to stop checking my phone every, I don't know, hour, every 10 minutes, whatever the case may be. And naturally, you're not going to be able to just turn that off. You're going to, like, you know, get that like false sense of vibration. You're going to check it out of habit because your brain's not even going to think twice about it. What you should do is say you want to stop checking your phone and you pull it out and you check it and you're like, oh, shoot, I just checked my phone. Put it away immediately. And immediately after you're done doing that, partake in some other good habit that you want to do. So whether that's maybe like push-ups or if you want to start drinking more water, drink a glass of water. And eventually what's going to happen, if I'm remembering this correctly, is that bad habit of checking your phone is going to be replaced by the good habit. So eventually you won't feel like checking your phone. You'll just drink a glass of water, for example. I thought that was really unique and a really good idea.
That's a cool idea. You know what's funny is I guess I've inadvertently kind of done that now, but I didn't go about it with that way because for me, and I'm not arguing, I'm just thinking out loud. For me, one thing I didn't want to do, I don't know how to word it exactly. I like that idea, and I think that's actually a good place to start for a lot of people, and that could be a great way to handle like really serious addictions, like well, I shouldn't say really serious, but the heavier day-to-day addictions like the phone, like social media. Like that might be a great way to start something like that. But I also wanted to get to a place where I could become mindful of what I was doing and essentially just learn to sit with that discomfort, that anxiety, and just kind of let that habit dissipate altogether, instead of just switching it over to a different habit. Because even though I do like the idea, you know, if you switch to a productive habit, then that's great. I mean, because we are creatures of habits. So we're going to get addicted to everything, even if it is good. Even our good habits that are productive are probably some bit of an addiction if we were to really break down our activity with them. So I think that's inevitable to do that. But also I really like the idea of, like, I didn't want to just escape from whatever it was I was trying to quit.
Right.
And I'm not saying swapping it for something productive is escaping. I think that's a good method, and I think that could probably be a good method for certain things. But I definitely also think it's important to like just be mindful and be aware and make sure you're not just escaping from it. You know, because if every single thing that you don't like doing, if you instantly try to swap it out for something productive, are you still going to feel like a monkey on a string at the end of the day? Maybe, because then it's like you still don't have that free will to be grounded. It's like the second that urge comes on, it's like, oh, now I have to go do this productive thing. And then like it could still end up kind of running you in a way. It's like, oh, we're having a date night dinner here. Got to check my phone. Nope. Instead, I got to do 10 push-ups in the middle of dinner. It's like, that's extreme, but I think that's obviously like more extreme. I don't think that's very realistic, but I do wonder if you just totally swap out the addiction and you still leave that same amount of addictions running you, I still wonder if that could be, it's going to be better because you'll be more productive, but I think there's some value in probably at least some of the things you're hooked on, just trying to be mindful, sit with them and slowly just like break that addiction, you know, almost cold turkey detox from it until it's gone.
I think addiction's so unique because I think when you hear the word addiction, what do you think of? Drugs, alcohol, bad things.
Right.
But you can be addicted to really good things too, and it can have a bad impact on you, like going to the gym or like running. Like those can be very bad addictions if they're running your life.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I think addiction's anything where I know there's actual definitions for it, but I consider anything that basically controls you on like a compulsive level, something that you either don't have control over or you have a very, very hard time fighting. Something that if you do try to resist, it creates a lot of anxiety in you and pulls at you, and it really just takes all your focus away and steals your focus like in that moment. I think all of that would be addiction.
Do you think there's any saving society from social media at all at this point, or are we way too far gone? I think we're way too far gone.
Yeah, my first response would be we're way too far gone. Optimistically, maybe with all this information coming out, like I've been on social media for how long? I'm just learning about this dopamine thing now. I'm just implementing these exercises to get away from it now. So maybe over time, like this information will become more and more common, and maybe people will start becoming more mindful of how they interact with social media, maybe. But ultimately, I don't know. Social media is advancing. We have the metaverse coming on now. It seems like we're just going to go down that drain, unless we can adapt to it. Because one thing that the neurologist did say is that, and a couple of different sources I've listened to said the same thing too, is that essentially the reason this dopamine thing is a problem is because our design is just antiquated. Our design is out of date. It's like designed for back when we were more in the wild.
Right.
And it's like, it's just not compatible with our living circumstances today. So maybe we'll evolve or adapt over the next 100 years. I don't know.
I can kind of see it from both sides in a way. On one end, social media is a relatively new thing, which I think people forget. It's really only been around like a little over 10 years.
You're right, yeah.
So we're kind of still learning about this. It's not like
that's a trip. I forget that.
Like a flu shot, which has been around for 100 years plus. It's very, very new. So it's possible, like you said, that like some people are studying this and they come out with these studies, and maybe it is possible they start teaching in schools. Who knows what could happen? Like could I see the day where in 2050 there's a social media clash and you need to talk about why it's bad? I could. Will it happen? I can't see that right now, but if you'd have told me, if I was around 30 years ago and you'd have told me there's going to be this thing called the internet, it's going to be the next big thing,
right? And
it's going to save everyone when coronavirus comes out, I probably would have been like, dude, I don't know who the hell you are, but you're crazy.
Yeah.
On the other end of things, I feel like it's almost impossible because social media doesn't do things for just entertainment purposes. It also does things for businesses. It pushes advertisement, and it's also, in turn, that leads to a good economy. When people see that Target has a 50% off sale, they want to go buy stuff at Target. When they see Walmart has half-price chicken, they want to go to Walmart. And all these breweries and small businesses advertise on there. When you look at it like that, especially with America being more capitalistic, it's hard for me to wrap my head around that and just say we're going to be able to save ourselves.
Yeah, oh yeah. Here's my take on the whole thing. I guess if I were to sum it up, I'm not anti-social media at all, despite me moving away from it. I think social media is a beautiful thing in so many ways. I think people that say social media is purely bad are being very narrow-minded or very biased. Because, I mean, all the reasons you named. I mean, everyone complains about how, like, bad times are now. And yes, of course, like, right now specifically with, mandates, shutdowns, all this craziness, yeah, okay. So like the last couple of years specifically have been pretty rough, but I'm talking like time periods of history, like the last 10 years have been actually amazing. Like you can create your own business from your phone now. You don't have to go out and try to get the money for a brick and mortar shop anymore. You can start your own e-commerce business right online. It's a beautiful thing. I mean, you got people who are generating careers, getting famous, being influencers who in the past wouldn't have been able to do that. You got musicians now able to blow themselves up without having to get a record deal or get radio play. So I think social media is an awesome thing, and you can stay connected in cool ways. We don't need high school reunions anymore. I follow everybody I went to high school with on Facebook. We can be interactive with our family. So there's a lot of good in social media too. What I think it comes down to is individual people needing to handle themselves better. And I don't blame the people. I think the information is just not out there yet. It's akin to almost saying, are bars and liquor stores deadly for us in America? Inherently, bars and liquor stores are not. I mean, you and I, we enjoy going to a good brewery or getting a couple of drinks at a bar or whatever. It's fun. Or go to the liquor store, grab whatever, bottle of wine. Like, for us, that's a cool thing. I'm glad they're around. We have fun with it. And you and I stay pretty balanced with that. Mm-hmm. Of course, other people are not balanced with that, and they'll go and abuse that. And they can they can go down dark paths from that. And I'm not making light of that at all. But what it comes down to, I think, is inherently, you can't say like bars and liquor stores inherently are bad or cause anything. It's people's self-control or lack of self-control that end up leading to good or bad results with them. And I think social media is the same sort of thing. Hence the dopamine thing. I think if you can be aware of the effect social media has on you, social media, again, with the dopamine, it's essentially like putting people in a bar with free drinks. It's like letting you set up shop and live in a bar rent-free year round with unlimited free drinks. You're going to get a lot of people who know nothing about alcoholism, addiction, limitations, balance, who are going to, oh, this is cool. Drink. This is fun. I'm having a blast. Next thing you know, they're hooked on it. They've developed alcoholism, whatever the case may be. Then you're going to get some people that like, I like this in moderation. They stay balanced. It's going to be a free-for-all. But imagine if that was the case where liquor stores and bars were totally free and they were right where we sat and lived. We didn't have to drive to them. We just lived in them and they were all free year-round, never ran out. That's what social media is. You have this constant source of dopamine and it's free and you don't have to leave your couch or do anything to get it. And we're just swimming in it. So if you can be aware enough of that, of the repercussions of that, if you abuse that, to balance yourself with it, you're going to be fine. And if you can use it for productive things, you're going to be awesome. But if you aren't aware of the effects that can have on your mind, then you're going to go down a bad road with social media. You know, you're going to have that unlimited alcohol, so to speak, via social media. The difference, though, is social media, liquor stores and bars, I said, aren't inherently bad. However, I don't know if there's necessarily inherent value they add. I'm sure you can make an argument, you know, for the economy and the amount of money they bring in, perhaps. But other than that, I don't know if there's any inherent value to them for the average person either. They're just they're what you make of them. Whereas social media, I think, has a lot of inherent value to offer through ways of networking and business, like you said. So I think social media can actually be a really good thing, but I think people need to be more aware of it. So I think it comes down to the person. And I think people just need to, that information about dopamine especially just really needs to be spread, and people need to become more aware of it and be more aware of how they handle themselves with social media.